Hi students, in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about how to manage your paper for this Western Civ 1 class. So I have the assignment here that I'm going to go through for you in a little bit of detail, and then I'm going to talk about the rubric of the assignment. So this is a 3 to 4 page historical analysis, so it's not a book report, it's not a comprehension exercise. At this level, I assume that you can read and understand one of these texts and that you're ready to move on to analyzing this text. It's going to be 3 to 4 pages. It's going to be on whichever one of the 3 class texts that you chose. And it's going to answer this question about the role of reason and religion in this society. And these are the this is the outline that I recommend that you follow. On the first page, in the first paragraph, you explain who the author of your source was, their background, and do that in a sentence, maybe 2 sentences. Talk about the genre of the source. Is it a work of literature? Is it a work of poetry? Is it a work of history? Is it a work of philosophy? And then give your thesis. Explain what this source has taught you about ancient Greek society. Then in the second paragraph of the first page, I want you to talk about the broader context of the source. What date was this source written? What were some of the events that were going on at the time that this source was written that contribute to your argument about the source? And then I want you to talk about the places and names, events that are referenced in the source themselves, the source itself, and how they support your overarching argument. So now we're part of the way, we're halfway down the second page. So it's very important that you identify what's going on in the source, some of the messages of the source, and then you connect that with what's going on in the historical narrative at the time. Jack fell down and broke his knee at the time when California was experiencing severe earthquakes. By connecting these 2 pieces of information together, we can say that one of the things that we learned about earthquakes in California at this time was that they led to people injuring their knees. It's kind of a facile example, but just to give you a sense of what I'm looking for. And so we get into the Jack fell down and broke his knee aspect of the paper next. In the second, on the second half of the second page, and for most of the third page, I want you to take time to draw out themes of the source that support your argument. This source is about reason in society. This source is about education in society. Okay, show me some examples. Show me some examples from the source that back up this argument. So let's say that your thesis is that the source is about education in society. What are some themes that build up to this overarching message of education? Here we see so-and-so studying astronomy. Here we see so-and-so studying biology. Here we see so-and-so studying literature. Those would be 3 themes that correspond to the overarching message or make up the overarching message of the text. And so I want you to set out these themes in the second half of the second page and for most of the third page. Then on the 4th page, I want you to talk about why this source is important for understanding ancient Greek society. If we know that this source teaches us that education was important at this time and that there were events going on, there were wars or political disturbances going on at this time, what does that teach us about what the ancient Greeks were like? What do we learn about ancient Greece from reading this text, thinking about it in the context in which it was written, that we would not know from reading a textbook entry about ancient Greece? So this isn't supposed to be just kind of a conclusion, summarize what you did before. This is supposed to be the payoff. This is supposed to be the most important part of the paper where you talk about why the source that you have analyzed is significant. So make sure this is a full and detailed section that should be probably about a page when you finished. Okay, so that's an outline of the paper itself. Now I'm going to talk about the rubric that you can find here. When it comes to effort, This means that the source is in an intelligible format, the format that I requested. It's submitted on time. It means that you use footnotes. That bears into presentation as well. We're going to do a writing assignment in this class, focuses on the way that I want you to cite the text. You need to follow that procedure of citation when you write the term paper. Make sure that your language is clear, easy to understand and accessible. Use the writing center, talk to a friend, make sure someone else reads your paper before you turn it in. Accuracy, that's a pretty straightforward one. Only use accurate historical facts. Thesis, this is one of the most difficult parts of the paper. I've talked a little bit about the thesis already, but in the end, make sure that the thesis explains both the text and how the text fits into the time period in which it was written. That's the key, connecting the close-in focus of the individual text and the broader lens of what was going on in this society at the time. Background. This relates really to the first page and a half. Have you talked about who the author is? Have you accurately identified the genre of the source? Who the source was intended to be, who it was written for? What is the context in which the source was written? What was the time period? Be precise. Be as precise as you can. Don't just say written in the first 500 years AD. That doesn't help anyone. Be precise with the geographical text as well. We know that these sources were written in ancient Greece. If you could be more precise than that, if you can say that this source relates to Athens specifically, then you should. Analysis. This refers to the themes. Make sure you identify these three themes. Don't simply restate the story of the text. Draw out some messages that are consistent, that repeat throughout the text as you read it. Structure. Pretty straightforward again. Did you follow the pattern that I set out above? Are all paragraphs linked together to form one paper? We don't want just 5 different components. Evidence, especially when you're doing the theme section, make sure you're citing from the source regularly to make sure you're providing evidence for your arguments. Other times, I'm extremely interested in your opinion. In this paper, I'm much more interested in seeing how you support that opinion with evidence. And significance. Already talked about this a little bit. This is the 4th page. Make sure you're drawing out why this source is important. Not just saying that the source exists and what it says, but why is it important for understanding who the ancient Greeks were. And then the last section, originality. It's not as though you're going to get massively penalized if your work isn't totally original. Again, this is an introductory history class. But I want to see that it's not as though you've just Googled why is the Barcae a significant Greek source. I want to see that there's some of your own thought in there, you're integrating your own thought with what you've learned in the class. So this is the end of this help video about writing the term paper for this Western Civ 1 class. Let me know if you have any questions. Happy to help you at any stage in the writing process.